Hey guys, Ben Painting. Today we're back once again for another video, and this time we're doing something a little bit different. We have head up to Daytona Tamworth to take on one of the rounds of Superchamps in the DMAX karts, which is something that we haven't done before, and just wanted to come up here, give it a good go and see how we get on. Now what you are going to witness is a lot of carnage and, quite frankly, some pretty poor driving from myself. However, before we jump into the rest of the footage, if you do enjoy this one, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. Now what you are watching here is the practice session that was being completed before we headed into any of our races. There was a 10-minute practice session followed by 2 heats, and wherever we ended up in these races was then going to distribute us into the finals. So obviously we wanted to just try and get our head down, do it as best we possibly could, and see where we end up. Now obviously we've never really driven in these karts at all. We also had a nice little bit of rain coming down, as you can see on the camera, and obviously we've only ever been to Tamworth once before, and this was in the lower N35 Sodi kart. So I knew for a fact this was going to be a bit of a rough day, being thrown in at the deep end, just trying to do anything that we possibly can to get a decent result. And what you're going to watch is you're going to see how we end up doing. Now you can see already we've almost killed ourselves off the track twice already, and we've leaked a lot of positions coming out of the pit lane. We've also got drivers around us that are also adapting to the wet weather, so you can see their drivers up ahead of us spinning out of the way as well. There's yellow flags all over the place, but we're just going to try and get some temperature into the tyres and hopefully find the areas of grip on the track. Now what I was trying to do almost immediately was use the conventional wet racing lines that I tried to use by going all the way over to the outside of the track, as this is where the kart then bites. However, obviously we were struggling, and you're going to see how we're struggling as we come across the timing line here, coming down into the second corner on the track. Now we come out wide here to try and get a good exit going into the third corner. However, unfortunately, we just sort of lose our way and drift slowly off of the track. So here you can see already this is crash number 1 of the day, hitting the barriers. We were followed there by a driver behind us as well, drifting ourselves off onto the side of the track and then rejoining safely. This did not end here, as we then came into a couple of laps later, or I believe this was the same lap or a lap later, and we're coming into the second corner once again, just overcooking it here and sliding off into the barriers. Obviously this is not where we really wanted to be, and we were quite frustrated about this. So you can see here we have got a marshal running over, and he was in fact our saving grace in this situation, running over like David Hasselhoff to come and pull us out of the barriers so we could then get on our way again once more. Now a couple of laps later, once again we have another skill issue here coming down the hill, and we just sort of slide off into the grass once again, situating ourselves there. And then the next lap we do the exact same thing once again, just this time throwing it in a little bit harder and pushing ourselves into the barrier. Finally, at the end of practice, we come across the timing line, and luckily this time we were able to sort of get away from the end of practice without spinning off. Now moving ourselves into the first heat, you can see that we are situated in 4th position on the grid on the outside. Now this was quite a sketchy position to be in. Obviously, having just spun off in practice, I wasn't too confident, and luckily here you can see we are stuck on the outside with a lot of grip. A lot of drivers, however, come barreling through off of the first corner, and they then go flying through. We then have a little bit of a moment here as the driver up ahead of us goes sliding past, and we get loaded at the same time, so we're getting hit from all over the place like a pinball, and the drivers then, all going into the second corner, decide to just hit one another and take each other out. So we're able to gain a few places back here, and again you can see coming into the third corner we're just trying to take it nice and steady, not trying to take anyone out, just trying to run our own race, as I knew that we weren't going to be ultra competitive after all of the events from practice. Now here once again we're trying to stay on the outside line here where there is a little bit more grip. However, unfortunately, as we come into the braking zone here, we just lock the wheels up on the car and we end up in the barrier once again. Now here I wanted to decide to just wait for everyone to go past, didn't want to ruin anyone else's race by trying to rush to get back on the track, and you'll see why, because later on in the race once again we have another little skill issue, hitting the barriers and annoying ourselves once again. And later on in the race as well, we then start to get a bit more confidence, and this is where we had our biggest crash of the day. So we're coming past the timing line here to start a new lap. We are in 18th position, and then we decide to slide off the track. Here is then where we proceeded to stay and sit for the next couple of laps, as we were too fat to be pushed out of the mud by only one marshal. So you can see here I'm holding the flag of desperation, and the marshal is unfortunately unable to push me out of the mud. So we are sat here, the marshal's doing tricks with the yellow flags, and now we have two marshals attempting to push our big heavy body out of the mud, and luckily we are finally able to escape. Now unfortunately this is not the last sort of issue we had of the day. Another little slide going into the second corner here, and luckily this one wasn't a big one where we ended up in the grass and sort of stuck there, so we were able to get back on our way. And then as we come down into the last couple of corners, this was in fact the very last lap of the first heat. Now unfortunately you can see we are a very long way off any of the other drivers on the track. We are actually 40 seconds behind. We've been lapped by everyone, and we are posting 77-second lap times, which unfortunately just isn't quite good enough. You can see even on our last lap we're drifting all over the place, and we have just sort of entered the grass slightly there, trying to take a bit too much of the track limits on the outside. Again, we are still trying to push the car as much as possible, as we still had another heat and then a final to go. Now obviously I would love to show you that footage, but unfortunately I do not have that footage. So this is in fact the last lap of the race, just because I did a bit of a silly, and you will see why as we come to the end of the video. So coming through the last couple of corners here on this final lap, we're just trying to take as wide lines as possible to find where the grip is on the track, really yanking on the steering wheel and trying to pin the throttle down to get the wheels spun up, heated up, and giving us as much grip as possible. Coming into the hairpin here near the end of the lap, really trying to take a nice wide line into the corner to preserve as much momentum as possible, not doing it in a very efficient way, as I'm sure many of the locals would probably tell me about. And then finally, as we come down the back straight here to come over the start finish line, we do in fact finish our first heat in 18th position, about 1 or 2 laps down. So this does in fact bring us to the end of the footage, and you can see why as we look in the top left hand side of the screen. This is what I managed to record for the rest of the day instead of any on-track racing, and unfortunately in the final I was in fact wearing my black tinted visor, which was not allowed to be worn in the final just because it got so dark. So unfortunately I had to borrow a helmet from Daytona themselves. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. This was a really fun little event. Obviously unfortunately I don't have too much footage for you guys, which is a bit of a shame, but sometimes these things happen. If you have enjoyed this video, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. As always, we do have a lot more other events coming up very soon. We've got the local finals of BIKC, which at this time of recording was completed a couple of days ago, so I will get that out shortly for you guys. And as always, down below in the description is my link tree, so feel free to follow me on there if you want more updates on any of the other driving I get up to, as I am very active over on Instagram. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.